On a freezing January morning in 2017, 14-year-old Alianna DeFreeze kissed her mother goodbye, stepped into the biting Cleveland air, and walked toward her school bus stop. She never made it to her classroom. 3 days later, police officers pushed open the back door of a dark, abandoned house on Fuller Avenue, just 2 blocks from her bus transfer stop. The moment the door swung open, the freeze of the winter air vanished, replaced by the thick, sickening smell of iron and decay. Flashlights cut through the pitch-black hallway. On the floorboards were fresh, smeared footprints of dark blood. On the walls, jagged, bloody handprints traced a path down the corridor. In a back room, officers found a scattered pile of household tools: a screwdriver, a heavy drill, and a box cutter, all caked in deep red stains. When they kicked open a locked interior door, they found a small body curled in the corner. Her clothes were torn, her backpack lay nearby, and her body bore marks of unspeakable torture that had lasted for hours. Who could do this to an innocent child? And how did a registered violent predator target her on a busy city street without anyone noticing? Today, we're visiting the case of Alianna DeFreeze. If you believe that every victim deserves a voice and that stories like Alianna's must be told so no other child is lost in the dark, hit the subscribe button. Join our community today. Turn on the notification bell and leave a comment below. When you subscribe, you help us bring these cases out of the shadows and make sure Alianna's name is never forgotten. Alianna DeFreeze was born on June 12, 2002, in Detroit, Michigan. Her parents, Donisha Cooper and Damon DeFreeze, loved her deeply from the moment she took her first breath. Even after her parents separated when she was young, they maintained a close, loving co-parenting relationship. The family moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where Alianna split her time between her mother's home and the home of her father and stepmother, Wyan. Alianna was a bright light in her family's life. While most 14-year-old girls were focused on high school drama, makeup, and social media, Alianna preserved a rare and sweet childlike innocence. She was diagnosed early in life with a developmental delay and received special education services. She loved playing with stuffed animals, building games with her dolls, and singing along to her favorite movie, Frozen. In early 2017, Alianna was a 7th grader at E-Prep, a charter school in Cleveland. She loved going to school. She rarely missed a single day. Because E-Prep was located far from her house, Alianna had to navigate the city's public transit system every morning and afternoon. She had to take 2 separate public buses just to reach her classroom. Her parents were deeply protective. They worried constantly about her traveling across the city alone. Whenever possible, her father or stepmother would drive her or pick her up. But on days when work schedules did not allow it, Alianna relied on the city buses. Her mother, Donisha, found some comfort in one specific detail. Alianna's second bus stop, the spot where she transferred buses, was located directly across the street from the Cleveland Police Department's 4th District station. Alianna knew the routine by heart. She knew not to talk to strangers. She knew to go straight to school and come straight home. Her grandmother would text her throughout her morning commute, checking in as Alianna moved from one bus to the next. Thursday, January 26, 2017, began like any other winter morning. Alianna had an early tutoring session at school at 7 a.m. Her mother woke up with her, helped her prepare for the cold day, and walked her down to the bus stop at East 154th Street and Kinsman Avenue. They were rushing to catch the morning bus. As the bus pulled up to the curb, Alianna turned around, looked at her mother, gave her a sweet kiss, and said goodbye. Donisha stood on the cold sidewalk and watched her 14-year-old daughter climb the steps of the bus. The doors hissed shut, and the vehicle pulled away into the dim morning light. Donisha had no way of knowing that this warm goodbye would be the absolute last time she would ever see her daughter alive. Hours later, afternoon arrived. Donisha sat at home, expecting Alianna to walk through the front door after 3 p.m. as she always did. The clock ticked past 3:15 p.m. Then 3:30 p.m. Alianna did not come home. Donisha picked up her phone and dialed Alianna's cell number. It went straight to voicemail. Fear began to tighten in Donisha's chest. Alianna never turned her phone off. She never wandered away. Donisha called Alianna's stepmother, asking if anyone had picked her up from school early. The answer was no. With panic settling in, Donisha dialed E-Prep Charter School to ask if Alianna was still in late tutoring. The voice on the other end of the line dropped a bomb that shattered Donisha's world. The school representative checked their records and told her that Alianna had never arrived at school that morning. She had been marked absent all day. Nearly 9 full hours had passed since Donisha watched her daughter get on that first bus. 9 critical hours where Alianna was missing in the freezing cold, and nobody had sounded the alarm. Donisha had signed up for the school's automatic emergency alert system months prior. It was designed to send an immediate text message or phone call to parents the second a child was marked absent during morning homeroom. But on this morning, the system had failed completely. The school would later claim a technical malfunction prevented the automated message from going out. Those missing 9 hours meant that while Alianna was in unimaginable danger, no one was looking for her. At 4:15 p.m., Donisha called the Cleveland Police Department to report Alianna missing. When officers received the call, they immediately called the school to verify the report. In missing person cases involving teenagers, law enforcement officers often face a dangerous bias: the initial assumption that the child is simply a runaway who skipped class to hang out with friends. But as officers spoke with Donisha, Alianna's father Damon, and her teachers at E-Prep, that assumption vanished. Alianna was not a typical teenager. She had developmental delays. She relied on routine. She was terrified of breaking rules, loved being at home with her family, and lacked the survival instincts to navigate the streets alone at night. To make matters worse, Alianna suffered from severe asthma and required daily medication that she did not have with her. Recognizing the extreme danger, Cleveland police launched an urgent search. Officers fanned out across the neighborhood surrounding E-Prep, checking local fast food restaurants, convenience stores, and common teenage hangouts. They showed Alianna's photo to store clerks and pedestrians, hoping someone had seen the bright, smiling girl in her winter coat. Night fell over Cleveland, and the temperature dropped far below freezing. Search teams walked the streets with flashlights, calling out Alianna's name into the dark, icy air. Silence was the only answer. By Friday morning, January 27th, the community began to rally. Friends, family members, and local volunteers printed hundreds of missing person flyers and taped them to telephone poles, bus shelters, and storefront windows along the bus route. Detectives focused their investigation on Alianna's daily transit path. They knew she had safely boarded her first bus at East 154th Street because her mother had physically watched her step inside. The critical question was, did she ever reach her transfer point? Investigators contacted the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority, RTA, to secure surveillance video from the public buses. Meanwhile, detectives walked the transit route on foot, asking local homeowners and business owners for access to their private security cameras. A breakthrough came from a residential security camera located near the bus stop at East 93rd Street and Kinsman Avenue, the location where Alianna was supposed to get off her first bus and catch her second ride to school. Detectives sat in a dark room, staring at the grainy monitor. At approximately 6:45 a.m. on January 26th, the video showed the RTA bus pulling up to the curb. The doors opened. A small figure dressed in a heavy winter coat stepped down onto the sidewalk. It was Alianna. She had made it to her transfer stop. The video showed her standing on the sidewalk, pulling her coat tight against the bitter wind, waiting near the corner for her second bus to arrive. But then, as the camera continued to play, Alianna walked out of the frame. She never boarded the second bus. As news of her disappearance hit local television stations, conflicting tips began pouring into the police station. One witness claimed they saw a girl matching Alianna's description sitting inside a local McDonald's near her school that Thursday morning, talking with another young girl. Another tip came from an RTA bus driver, who reported seeing a girl who looked like Alianna getting off his bus at 3:30 p.m. later that afternoon. Detectives rushed to verify each claim, pulling hours of video from the fast food restaurant and the bus line. One by one, the tips fell apart. Neither sighting was Alianna. The leads were turning into dead ends, and the clock was ticking down fast. By Saturday, January 28th, 2 full days had passed since Alianna vanished. The city of Cleveland was on high alert. Residents who grew up in the area knew the dark history of the city. They remembered all too well how missing young Black girls in these neighborhoods often became tragic headlines. Fear settled over the community like a heavy fog. On Sunday morning, January 29th, 2017, 72 hours after Alianna kissed her mother goodbye, police decided to change their strategy completely. If Alianna had not left the area on a bus, she had to be somewhere nearby. Detectives organized a massive grid search focusing on the immediate 2-block radius surrounding the intersection of East 93rd Street and Fuller Avenue. This neighborhood was plagued by urban decay, dotted with dilapidated, abandoned houses that had stood empty for years. These abandoned properties were notorious for drug activity and illegal dumping, but they also offered endless dark corners where a crime could be hidden. At around 7 p.m. on Sunday evening, as the winter sun dipped below the horizon and darkness swallowed the streets, 3 Cleveland police officers walked down Fuller Avenue. They shined their heavy flashlights onto the facade of an old, rotting 2-story house. The windows were boarded up, but as the officers walked around to the rear of the property, they noticed something that made them stop dead in their tracks. The back door of the abandoned house was standing wide open. The officers pulled out their guns, turned on their heavy flashlights, and stepped through the open back door into the pitch-black building. The second they stepped inside, the cold winter air vanished. It was replaced by a thick, suffocating heaviness that hung in the quiet darkness like a wet blanket. The air smelled foul and rotten, a sickly mix of damp mold, old decaying wood, and the strong metallic reek of fresh blood. It was so thick it made it hard to breathe, filling the room with an instant feeling of pure dread. The beam of the main officer's flashlight cut through the dark, moving across peeling wallpaper and broken floorboards. Then, the light landed on something on the ground. Directly in front of them were dark, fresh footprints pressed into the thick dust on the floor, footprints left behind in wet blood. The officers walked forward slowly, their heavy boots crunching loudly on broken glass and trash. The flashlight beam followed the trail of blood as it smeared across the dining room floor and splashed up against the walls in sharp, violent streaks. In the middle of the room sat a cloth tool bag. It was open, with tools spilled out across the wooden floor. The flashlights lit up a heavy power drill, a flathead screwdriver, and a sharp utility knife. Every single tool was dripping with thick, dark blood. Next to the tools were torn, blood-soaked pieces of a winter coat and clothes. A wave of cold fear hit the officers in the stomach. The terrible heaviness in the room made everything feel horrifyingly real. This was not just a crime scene. It was a place of extreme torture. They walked deeper into the house, following the blood trail down a narrow, dark hallway toward the back of the ground floor. At the very end of the hall stood a heavy wooden door. One officer reached out and tried the handle. It was locked. Without waiting, the lead officer stepped back and kicked his heavy boot against the wood right near the lock. The wooden frame cracked, and the door slammed open into the dark room. The light from 3 flashlights rushed inside, cutting through the heavy shadows and landing right in the far corner of the small room. There, curled up tightly in a ball against the bare wall, was the small body of a young girl. Her heavy winter coat was torn wide open. Her clothes were shredded. Sitting in the dirt just inches away from her small boots was her blue school backpack. The officers ran forward and dropped to their knees beside her to check for a pulse, praying for a miracle. But her skin was icy cold to the touch. Alianna DeFreeze was gone. The officers slowly backed out of the room, closed off the area, and called for homicide detectives and crime scene experts. When Maine homicide detectives arrived on Fuller Avenue later that night, they worked through the scene with extreme care. The sheer level of destruction inside that empty house shocked even the most experienced police officers. The violence brought upon this defenseless 14-year-old girl was so extreme that investigators knew right away they were hunting a dangerous predator. Alianna's body was carefully moved to the county medical examiner's office. The next morning, doctors began the heartbreaking job of performing the official autopsy to figure out exactly how Alianna died. When the medical examiner shared the initial results with detectives, the details were terrifying beyond words. Alianna had suffered severe, repeated beatings across her head, face, and body. Deep cuts and puncture marks covered her entire skin, matching the exact size and shape of the screwdriver, drill, and knife found in the bloody tool bag. The medical report confirmed that Alianna had also been subjected to a violent sexual assault. Doctors found defensive cuts and bruises covering her small hands, wrists, and arms. Painful proof that the young girl had fought back with everything she had against her attacker. Most heartbreaking of all, the medical examiner found signs that some of her first wounds had actually begun to heal slightly before she died. This crucial detail revealed a devastating truth. Alianna was not killed quickly. She had been trapped inside that freezing, dark house and tortured for hours before her life was taken. The injuries were so widespread and severe that the medical examiner could not point to just one single fatal wound. Instead, her official cause of death was ruled as a combination of severe cuts, deep beatings, and extreme physical trauma, though. News of the discovery spread across Cleveland on Monday morning. The small bit of hope that Alianna's family held onto for 3 long days was instantly crushed by overwhelming grief. Donisha Cooper and Damon DeFreeze were plunged into a living nightmare. The sweet, gentle girl who loved dolls and sang songs from Frozen had suffered an unthinkable fate just 2 blocks from her bus stop. Community anger exploded. How could a 14-year-old girl be dragged into an abandoned house in broad daylight without anyone noticing? Who was the monster walking the streets of Cleveland? Detectives knew that physical evidence from the house, including DNA taken from the tools and Alianna's clothing, had been rushed to the state crime lab for emergency testing. But DNA results would take days. They needed answers right away. Detectives went right back to the neighborhood around East 93rd Street and Fuller Avenue, determined to track every single step Alianna took on the morning of January 26th. They began knocking on doors again, visiting every business, church, and home within 4 blocks of the house. And at a small church located right on the corner of Fuller Avenue and East 93rd Street, detectives found the key that would finally expose the predator, hiding in plain sight. Detectives walked up the steps of the small church sitting at the corner of Fuller Avenue and East 93rd Street. They knew time was running out. They needed to find out who was standing on that street corner on the morning of January 26, 2017. When officers asked the church leadership for their outdoor security camera files, the staff immediately handed over the recordings. Detectives took the video files back to the station and loaded them onto a computer screen. The video quality was not great. It was grainy and low resolution. But as detectives fast-forwarded to 6:45 a.m. on January 26th, the screen showed Alianna walking into view. She was walking down the sidewalk by herself, pulling her winter coat tight. She reached the street corner, right outside the church. Then something happened. A large figure stepped out from the shadows near the corner. A tall man was standing there waiting. As Alianna got close, the man stepped directly into her path and spoke to her. On the screen, detectives watched Alianna stop in her tracks. She took a step back, her body language showing clear hesitation and fear. The first camera lost sight of them as they moved around the corner. But the church had a second security camera mounted near the back of their parking lot. Detectives opened that second video file. The second camera caught a lower angle of the sidewalk. It showed Alianna's legs and boots and the larger legs of the man walking right behind her. The man was guiding her, staying close to her back so she could not run away. He was forcing her down Fuller Avenue, straight toward the rotting, abandoned house where her body was found 3 days later. Detectives sat back in their chairs, staring at the screen in disbelief. They had just watched the abduction of a 14-year-old child on camera. Now they had to answer one critical question: who was the man on that corner? To get a clearer look at his face, detectives rewound the church video to earlier that morning, long before Alianna ever arrived on her bus. They watched the empty sidewalk on the screen, waiting to see where the man came from. At around 6:15 a.m., the video showed a man walking down the street in front of the church. He walked past the building, went out of frame, and then turned around and walked back. He was pacing up and down the sidewalk. He moved slowly, looking around the street like a hunter waiting for a vulnerable target. The camera gave detectives a solid visual profile: a middle-aged black male with a distinct build, wearing a dark coat and winter hat. Detectives immediately pulled up local police records. They focused on men living in the neighborhood who had a criminal history of violent attacks or sexual offenses. They lined up dozens of mugshots, comparing face after face to the grainy image from the church camera. And then, one mugshot matched the video perfectly. His name was Christopher Whitaker. Whitaker was a 44-year-old registered sex offender living in the area. In 2005, he had been arrested, convicted, and sent to prison for a horrifying crime. He had violently assaulted and stabbed a young woman. Yet, despite that history of violent knife attacks, Whitaker served only 4 years in prison before being released back onto the streets of Cleveland. Detectives printed Whitaker's photo and brought it directly to the state crime laboratory. Pathologists and DNA technicians had been working around the clock, processing the biological evidence gathered from the bloody tool bag, the drill, the screwdriver, the box cutter, and Alianna's clothing. The lab results came back, offering 100% scientific certainty. The foreign DNA recovered from the crime scene and from Alianna's body was a complete match to Christopher Whitaker. He had left his biological signature all over the tools he used to torture the defenseless teenager. On February 2nd, 2017, 4 days after Alianna's body was found, U.S. Marshals and Cleveland homicide detectives tracked Whitaker to a residence in Mayfield Heights, Ohio. Officers surrounded the home, moved in, and placed Christopher Whitaker under heavy arrest. They brought him into an interrogation room at the police department. A small camera in the corner recorded every word. At first, Whitaker acted calm. He sat in his chair and flatly denied knowing Alianna. When detectives asked him if he had ever stepped foot inside the abandoned house on Fuller Avenue, Whitaker tried to brush it off. He claimed he had visited the abandoned building a few days earlier, but only to search for scrap metal with another man. Detectives let him talk. Then they laid down the evidence. They showed him the church video. They showed him the lab reports with his DNA. Under heavy pressure, Whitaker's story began to crumble. He started changing his details, stumbling over his own words. He admitted that he was a heavy crack cocaine user. He claimed that on the morning of January 26, he was high on crack. He admitted he was inside the house when Alianna was killed, but he tried to blame someone else, claiming another man did the stabbing. Detectives pushed harder, calling out his lies line by line. Finally, after hours of relentless interrogation, Whitaker broke down and confessed. He claimed he turned around on the street, punched Alianna, and took her into the house. But then he tried to excuse his brutal actions, telling detectives, "I turned around and it's like I punched her. But then after that, it's like a blur. Like I almost blacked out. People are gonna look at me like a monster. I'm not a monster. I'm just an addict who made a mistake." A mistake? That was the word he used to describe the hours of violent torture and murder of a 14-year-old child. Detectives had his face on video, his DNA on the weapons, and his signed confession on tape. The trap had closed. The arrest of Christopher Whitaker brought a temporary wave of relief to Cleveland, but the fight for true justice had only just begun. County prosecutors moved quickly, hitting Whitaker with a grand jury indictment containing 11 severe felony counts. The charges were heavy: aggravated murder, kidnapping, rape, felonious assault, and tampering with evidence. Because the murder was committed during the commission of a kidnapping and rape, prosecutors officially announced they would seek the death penalty. In February 2018, the trial began in the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. The courtroom was packed every single day with Alianna's grieving family, community members, and journalists. The defense team attempted to build a case around Whitaker's severe addiction to crack cocaine. They argued that he was so heavily under the influence of drugs on the morning of January 26th that he lacked the mental capacity to plan or execute a premeditated murder. Prosecutors crushed that argument step by step. They reminded the jury of the church security footage. Whitaker had been pacing the sidewalk for nearly 30 minutes before Alianna arrived. He was hunting. He waited specifically for a young, vulnerable child walking alone. Then, prosecutors presented the physical evidence: the heavy drill, the flathead screwdriver, and the box cutter recovered from the scene bore Whitaker's DNA and Alianna's blood. Medical experts testified about the defensive wounds on Alianna's arms and hands. She had fought desperately for her life. Pathologists detailed the devastating extent of her injuries, proving that Whitaker had systematically tortured her over the course of several hours inside that cold, dark house. The jury did not take long to deliberate. After reviewing the mountain of forensic evidence, security footage, and Whitaker's taped confession, they returned with a verdict: guilty. Guilty on all 11 counts, including aggravated murder. During the penalty phase of the trial, the jury unanimously recommended the maximum punishment under Ohio law. On March 26, 2018, Judge Carolyn Friedland sentenced Christopher Whitaker to death by lethal injection. When the judge read the sentence aloud in the courtroom, Whitaker stood in his orange jumpsuit with an empty, emotionless look on his face. Alianna's family wept silently, holding hands in the front row. While Whitaker was sent to death row, Alianna's parents knew that holding the killer accountable was only half the battle. They wanted answers about the system that failed to protect their daughter. Why had 9 critical hours passed before Donisha was alerted that Alianna never arrived at school? And why was a dangerous, abandoned house left wide open for a violent predator to use as a trap? Donisha Cooper and Damon DeFreeze turned their heartbreak into relentless action. First, they began pushing lawmakers for a legislative change that would force every public and charter school in the state of Ohio to fix their attendance notification systems. Their hard work paid off. In 2019, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine signed Alianna's law into official state legislation. Under Alianna's law, all schools across Ohio are legally required to contact a parent or guardian within 120 minutes, just 2 hours, of the start of the school day if a child is marked absent without prior notice. Second, Alianna's family took direct legal action to demand accountability for the systemic failures that led to her murder. They filed a massive $15 million lawsuit naming E-Prep Charter School, the city of Cleveland, city employees, and the owner of the abandoned property where Alianna taken. The lawsuit alleged that the city and its employees failed to monitor, blighted, abandoned properties and prevent illegal activity from taking place inside them. It also accused the property owner of failing to maintain, secure, and monitor the house on Fuller Avenue. The legal battle was long and complex. In March 2019, Alianna's family filed an amended complaint. E-Prep moved to dismiss the claims against them, arguing they had legal immunity as a political subdivision. Although the trial court initially denied the school's request, Ohio's 8th District Court of Appeals later ruled in favor of the school. Despite those legal hurdles, the family kept fighting for justice. Finally, in January 2022, after years of court battles, Alianna's family received a $1 million settlement in connection with the lawsuit filed against the school and the city. Furthermore, the city of Cleveland took steps to demolish the abandoned, rotting house on Fuller Avenue, along with thousands of other blighted structures across the city, ensuring that no other predator could ever use that property as a dark hideout again. The story of Alianna DeFreeze is a harrowing reminder of how quickly an innocent life can be stolen, when predators lurk in plain sight and safety nets fail. Alianna was a sweet, gentle child who loved her family, enjoyed playing with her dolls, and looked forward to going to school every day. She deserved to grow up, finish her education, and live a full life. Because her family refused to stay silent, Alianna's law now protects millions of school children across the state of Ohio every single morning, and her family's legal fight forced cities to take responsibility for abandoned properties. Her life was taken in the dark, but her legacy continues to stand as a light saving other children from the very trap that took hers. May Alianna DeFreeze rest in perfect peace. Alianna's case brought sweeping changes to school safety protocols across Ohio and highlighted the dangers of abandoned properties in urban neighborhoods. Do you think school systems nationwide should adopt mandatory real-time absence notifications? What other steps should cities take to eliminate abandoned properties that pose dangers to local communities? Leave your thoughts and join the discussion in the comments below.